Whoa, what's that mean?
Dad.
Yeah, this is the Torah portion that's named after my dad. It means come, right? It's interesting, I guess in other places, when the Lord tells Moses to go to Pharaoh, it says go. But in this portion, it says come to Pharaoh. So, I think that's kind of a cool thing, like just showing that, God's already there. Like there's nothing to be worried about, nothing to be afraid of. Like, I'm already there. You come now, and let's go talk to Pharaoh, kind of. So if there was any fear building up because of everything that Moses is doing or God's doing to Egypt, and if he's starting to get worried, why doesn't Pharaoh just kill me when I go in there, type of thing. So, all right. So we're starting in Exodus chapter 10. Mrs. Barnes or Mr. Barnes, if you want to go ahead and start reading. So why did they choose that New Testament portion? What's the connection? Passover lamb, right? Not breaking any bones. Okay, anybody have any comments to start with? Something that stood out to you? From any of it? Mr. Lopez?
I thought it was really awesome that even before they left the land of Egypt, going back to the Torah portion, he was saying, this is going to be a day that you're going to remember. This is going to be a day that you're going to be celebrating. What I'm going to do is going to be that awesome. So it was before he actually said, go ahead and get out, he was already saying this is going to be so huge that your generations are going to remember it. So, and then again, even after they came out of it, he said the same thing, you're going to be doing this, year after year. But it's just kind of reiterating just how powerful his promises are. And so if he says he's going to do it, he's going to do it. But not only is he going to do it, we're going to celebrate him doing it before he actually does it. So I just thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's cool. There's another passage that says that the return in the end, right? The gathering in the end will be even more amazing than what the going out of Egypt. So we won't even remember that. So there's levels to the greatness of what it's going to be.
Can I share since I've got the microphone right here?
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, John. Just two things. One, that he said it twice, that it's for the next generation. You're going to tell your sons. And I think that is so important that we remember in this day and age, everything we do is for the next generation. So, and secondly, I was looking up that word go, because you mentioned it. So obviously the name of the Torah portion. But it was like he was telling Pharaoh he wanted him to send them. And he wouldn't. He just kept saying that word, send them, and he refused. Even when he left, it was just go. So.
Mr. Baum, sorry.
To me, it was just amazing that, we've kind of already said it, but we can trust God. When he says that this is going to happen, no people can stand up, the enemy cannot stand up against him and say, no, that's not going to happen. God's going to make it happen. And he's going to come against whoever's against him, he will come against. And so to me, it's we have this amazing ability or lesson to really trust in what Yahweh says, that he will make it happen.
So something that, Elaine, go ahead if you got something.
I thought it was interesting that all the plagues represented a god, an Egyptian god. So it was that plague, that was the death of that god. So it showed that Yahweh was over all the Egyptian gods.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that probably had to do with the people in 10:7, where his Pharaoh's advisors are like, "Don't you know that Egypt is destroyed? Like, we have no hope. There's nothing left. Like, don't you see what's happening? The progression here, like, it's pretty intense." So I was listening to this little video somebody sent me today, and the guy was talking about the portion, and he said that when they put the blood on the doorpost, that they actually put it on the inside of the house. And I had never heard that before. I'd never thought about that before. And it was just kind of interesting. Like, wait, I thought it was on the outside. That's always what I pictured, right? But when you read it here, it doesn't necessarily say whether it's on the inside or outside. It just says on the doorposts and above the door.
What was their reasoning?
I don't know. I don't know why he says it was that way, but I think it makes sense, like, when you think about the heart and, accepting Yeshua and his sacrifice in your heart. So it has to be on the inside. It can't just be an outward thing. So that's the significance of it to me. But it was just interesting to me. It caught me by surprise a little bit, because I'd always just seen it on the outside. And so reading through here this time, it does say that when each house shall take it and kill it, and they can't take any of the flesh outside. So it doesn't specifically say they couldn't take the blood outside, but they can't take the flesh outside. So it makes sense that they've closed the door, they're cooking it, they're preparing it, they're all inside, that the blood would be on the inside of the doorpost. It's kind of just interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Anybody have any thoughts about that? And then, it does say that the Lord will see the blood on the doorpost, right? And then he won't let the destroyer come into your house. So obviously, the Lord is not inhibited by the walls or whatever, and he sees it, and then he won't let the destroyer in. So it's not about the destroyer seeing it on the outside, right? That's not what it's about. So I don't see any reason to doubt that it would be on the inside. It's just kind of interesting.
There is a tradition, again,
Hit the microphone.
kind of tradition in the Near East, Middle East area, that when a king would come into a town, they would give a token that they were subjects of the king, loyal subjects. And you could be killed if you did not put this on your doorpost. And a lot of times it was blood. There is a covenant called a threshold covenant. So you would step over the blood into the house and the subject is being honored by the king. So if we look at the Passover in relationship to that, like you said, I when I was a kid, I was like, God passed over the houses. No, it says the destroyer, the death angel. So who came in? You're protected by the blood of the Lamb on the inside.
Anybody else have something that they wanted to? Mrs. Jones?
I don't know how much 600,000 is. I didn't know it was that much. But so I go, okay, how much is that? So then on the internet, which is correct, right? In 2021, I guess it was the last census in Fresno, there was 545,000. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And together with Clovis was 123. So that's the guys. I guess maybe military age guys.
Yeah.
So I think John tried to tell us one time, tried to help us figure out how many people were there. Crazy amount.
Yeah.
Crazy. And then I had one other thing I thought it was interesting. I don't know what Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob knew, but it says it was 430 years to the day. Mm-hmm. So that's like Passover, And so I wonder what the significance of that was 430 years
Mhm.
before. And I didn't understand them roasting up the inner parts of the lamb. So I didn't know if you knew what that, maybe in Hebrew it tells what that means, but I know there's parts we're not, I think, technically supposed to eat.
Yeah.
But, so I didn't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that they're, roasting the whole thing. And it does say with inner parts or whatever. So I think some people say that they took out certain things, but that most of it was all there. Yeah. Okay, anybody else? Okay.
You want to say something?
No? Yeah, go ahead.
In the verse, it's something that tradition going on in Israel, but here when I see it, I'm not sure that the rabbis in Israel, they are right. It says in chapter 13, in verse 9 and 16, and it says that it will be a sign on your hand and to memorize between your eyes, and the law of the Lord, will be in your mouth. What the rabbis did, they call it tefillin. But this is something physically. We need to remember, and we to not in our mouths to declare the word of God, and for us it's a sign. But I'm not sure that those people that put tefillin, they do what the Lord wants them to do. So this is kind of ritual. My father used to do it, he was religion, but today as a believer, I don't accept it. For me it's like to remember, to read, to observe it to my heart, and to be a testimony in my life, and not just to put it in my hand and here and everywhere. Okay, that's it.
Yeah, no, I understand that perspective. There's that's definitely important, and we can't let it not be something that's on our heart, and that it's something that we want to do. But personally, I do tie tefillin, and I think that I think it's a good thing to do. I think that those physical reminders help us to really grab hold of things. And I think, honestly, that in Christianity, part of the reason why you see so many women who are holding the faith and so many men who want nothing to do with it is because we've abandoned the physical things. And we're not willing to say, yes, we do this. This is a physical command. We do it. It's not just all this abstract spiritual stuff that women seem to do okay, just holding on to that. But men need physical things. And I think that's part of the reason why Christianity, there's not so many men that are really grabbing hold and standing strong, is because we've taken away the physical part of things. So personally, I think that the physical little things like that, they are good, and we should do them, but obviously it's not everything, and we can't make it the main thing. The main thing is that it's in your heart, and that you do it, and you remember it, and think about it, and all that stuff. That's my perspective on that.
Well,
Did somebody say? Oh, Udi?
no, just one thing I will add to it is that it reminds me when Yeshua speaks to the religious leaders in his time, or he speaks actually to the people, he makes it very clear, and this is maybe the things that maybe the Christian world has forgotten through the years. Actually, both Jewish and Christian basically fell into religion. And that's where he told them that if your righteousness will not be more than the Pharisees, you'll not come to the kingdom of heaven. This is very serious. Basically, Yeshua just puts it really in a balance of it's not just about, it's about the heart. But from the heart comes something, and provokes you to deeds, to these things you're doing. So definitely it's a thing. But just kind of like something that I wondered, I'm not sure if I have really answer to this. It's something that I was just questioning myself. What does it mean in chapter 12, verse 41, it says that in this very day, the hosts of Yahweh came out of the land of Egypt. I think Yahweh is actually repeating this. He says, I will take out all my hosts out of Egypt. It's kind of, I was wondering, what does it mean? And I don't know. I'm not sure I know, but probably, well, it says also in verse 51, it says that and on the same day the Lord brought the sons of Israel out of Egypt by their hosts. Something seems to me, maybe there's also something spiritual here. Like as if we read in Daniel that there is like authorities in heaven about countries and stuff. So it's like as if God, it's this very significant time in history just took out his hosts out of Egypt, and it's like very, very significant. It's like this turning point in history for the nation, which just became a nation, and now he's just going out. Now it's the point in time that actually he promised to Abraham, and I also read in Genesis chapter 15 that he tells him very clearly, just prophesying for Abraham that's going to exactly what's going to happen, that they're going to be slaves in a land not theirs, and they will be afflicted for 400 years, and then they will come out with great possession. So it's pretty interesting to me that to think about it. What maybe somebody else has understanding about it.
Yeah, I noticed it too. It's kind of interesting that it uses the word hosts, like armies, like that type of word, which often is used for like angelic hosts and those types of things too. So, an interesting observation. Mr. Barnes is going to tell us what it means.
Yes. Well, Mr. Barnes will give us his interpretation of what he thinks it means. I kind of look at it like armies. If you go back to chapter 7 of Exodus, verse 4, when the Father's telling Moshe what's going to happen, he says, Pharaoh will not listen to you. Then I will lay my hand on Egypt and bring my armies. My translation says armies. My people, the sons of Israel, out of the land of Egypt with great acts of judgment. So, okay. So I facilitated a few weeks ago the very opening of Exodus, right? And part of my point was there is a great harvest. There is a planting. Yahweh brought them to the land through Joseph. And from there, it's like a planting. Just like when we go out in the field, right? We plant, you can't really see anything. It's very insignificant how many people they go in with. 70?
Yeah.
Sharon, how many people they come out with?
At one point it was, it was 600. But I compared to Fresno's spikes.
Right. They went in with 7 and they came out with Fresno. That's Clovis.
I think it's almost like Fresno triple, because you have lives and you have one baby per family, which is probably not exactly right.
Right. So, if you think about it in that regard, Yahweh planted his people, and then we see an increase. And not just a little increase. You know, there's that scripture that talks about 30, 60, 100-fold. That's with us. With Yahweh, I don't know, that's like a billion-fold, or I don't know what that is, but it's a big fold. Anyways, but it's his armies, okay? So what's the purpose? So what's the purpose of the harvest? Because that's what I always think of. What's the purpose of the harvest? And when he's talking about it, like my armies, what's an army? An army is to do the bidding of the king on earth as it is in heaven. So when Yeshua gives his final instructions and he teaches his disciples how to pray, he says, pray that it will be, my kingdom will come on earth as it is. Well, that's the thing. It's my kingdom. That's the word of a king, my kingdom. And that's why it's associated with armies. Now take it down to you and me. So what does that mean? I am a soldier. I say, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Right away, sir. I say, I will run into battle without thinking about it because I've been trained to do that. That's what a soldier does. Now, our God shows throughout Scripture how he led his peoples into battle, and many times not one single one was lost. This is who we are. And he's right in the get-go, right from the get-go, he's saying, you are my soldiers. I'm bringing you out to do a work today. And I believe that when he talks about in Jeremiah 16, there will be a second Exodus, not like the first, but it'll be greater. And that was even our Torah portion today in Jeremiah, where it says, I will bring you out from all of the nations. Who's he bringing out? It's the same thing. His soldiers. His armies that are trained that nothing can defeat them. These are the soldiers of the Creator of all things. When you think about it like that, and you think about it in respect to yourself, that's an interesting perspective. Anyways.
Yeah. Anybody else have a comment or something that stood out to you?
I just in my own personal walk, I've been kind of confronted with my own a deeper understanding of my own hardness of heart, as evidenced by my how shall I say it, unwillingness to obey the Father in things that He's been asking me to do for years. And I've been praying for for Him to really soften my heart and to give me a heart of flesh. But the scripture in chapter 10, verse 3, really speaks to me. How long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? And that's really, it's really tough, because when you don't obey the Father when He asks you to do something, especially if it's something that you like to do or you've liked to do for a long time, like drink coffee, for example. I mean, this doesn't apply to others, but I guess it has applied to me. For just a small thing, but maybe not. But it's just like I just am praying that the Father will give me a softer heart, so as to be willing to humble myself and obey Him. So I don't want to be a little Pharaoh.
Good. Mrs. Marino.
When we come into covenant and we are redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, we are given the gift of the Spirit. And the Spirit circumcises the heart of flesh.
Amen.
We are no longer slaves but children. It's a seal of our inheritance. And we are still required to obey. It's the sign of how we love, and we shall love. So in terms of who we are that army. We are set apart. Oh, and by the way, we're a royal priesthood. We have a job. And the priests were armed. So we do have a job. You need to know. We need to know our identity and walk in that.
somewhere it referred me back to Exodus 6, 26, which said it was the same Aaron and Moses whom the Lord said, bring out the sons of Israel from the land of Egypt according to their hosts. And I looked up that word in the Hebrew. It's T-S-A-B-A. I don't know how you pronounce that.
Tzava.
What is it?
Tzvaot.
So, okay, and so to me, it's like what Brian was saying. It's like each one of us has already been accounted for, and it's like He will not lose a single one. So we will be brought. We'll do this by His hosts. I mean, by the ones that He's set up to go out and be as a part of His army, and He will lose none of us. To me, that's what it's saying. It's kind of like exactly what you're saying. And I feel like it's supposed to be a real encouragement to us that He's going to bring us out by the hosts which He developed. And back then it was the tribes. Every tribe was named after their leader. And it's like, yeah, I feel like He's saying, like Brian was saying, we are a part of this army. We are a huge part. We each have our own part to play, and He will not lose any one of us.
Well, I think the kind of what I want to talk about was actually the hearts being hardened and Pharaoh's whole thing with hardening his heart. And that was kind of the thing that stood out to me this week when I was reading the portion and stuff. So early in the week, I was able to go visit somebody in prison, and part of the conversation that came up was just kind of about the little things that we allow in our lives, and they harden us, and eventually it gets to a really bad point where something extreme has to happen for God to get our attention. And so we were just kind of talking about, like the importance of, maintaining a soft heart toward the things of God. Like you're talking about, Bradley, of being quick to just obey and not develop a hardness towards something that God wants you to do. And because ultimately that's going to build up to something really bad, and it's going to have an effect in your life. And, it might have to be catastrophic to get your attention. And so we don't want to allow that, right? In order to be the most effective, we need to constantly be on alert for things that will harden us, or areas in our life where we're hardened towards something and not having that same soft heart like Yeshua has, right? And so yeah, that was kind of the thing that got my attention. It said in the end of the portion in Jeremiah, the Haftarah portion, it said, He will not leave you wholly unpunished, right? He's talking about how He's going to judge the nations and stuff, but even us, He's not going to leave us completely unpunished. There's an element of this correction that we need in order to get us back on track. And there's this one quote that a friend of mine told me. I can't remember who said it originally, but basically saying that God uses the least severe means to bring the most number of people to Him at the deepest level of devotion possible. Okay, so sometimes He has to use the severe means to get us there, but He'll use the least severe, and if that doesn't work, He goes and ramps it up and up. Like we see with Pharaoh, the plagues just keep getting worse and worse and worse, where eventually He lets the people go, but He never really gets Pharaoh's heart that we know of, right? He completely hardened himself to the point where even God is hardening him further. And you see the progression in Exodus. I think the first time it mentions Pharaoh having a hard heart is in chapter 4, and it says that God's talking to Moses in the wilderness, and He says, I will harden Pharaoh's heart. And then as we read in the story in chapter 7 and 8, I think it says that Pharaoh strengthened his heart, and then he hardened his heart, and then later on it even says that God hardened his heart. And so it's basically, it's that progression of thing where when you keep hardening and hardening and hardening, eventually you get to the point where even God will further harden that. And so we don't want to ever get there, right? We don't ever want to find ourselves in a situation like that where we're so hard towards something that God is doing. So yeah, I was just kind of looking at some other scriptures that were coming to mind about hardening. when I just looked up the word harden, I found one in 1 Samuel that I had never really thought about. But when the Philistines had captured the Ark of the Covenant, and they were getting ready, talking about sending it back and stuff, and whether they should send it with an offering or whatever, the golden tumors and stuff that they sent back with it. And one of their leaders, I guess, was like, don't harden your hearts like Pharaoh hardened his heart, and all this stuff happened. It's like, you know, even the Philistines, when they had the Ark of the Covenant, knew that story and were like, don't let us go there. Like, we're not going to be that way. So, like, just saying we need to not be, and even using it, I think, in a sense of, like, stinginess. Like, we captured this, we're going to hang on to it. I don't care what it does to us. It's like, that's kind of what Pharaoh is doing, right? It's like, I've got these people, they're my slaves, I don't care. And Egypt's destroyed from it. And that's kind of what the Philistines are saying, is like, we can't just keep holding on to this and let, you know, God work that same wrath on us, and so we need to let it go. And so I thought that one was pretty neat. And then there's in Psalm 95, it talks about those who go astray in their heart and are hardening their hearts. Hebrews chapter 3, it talks about, I think that's the one. I think Hebrews chapter 3 is the one where he talks about don't let your heart be hardened, and having a heart of unbelief, and that we should encourage one another daily to basically avoid those types of things, right? And so kind of the importance of having a brother, right? Having the iron sharpening iron, somebody who watches your daily life and can say, hey, are you becoming hardened to something here, right? And that's kind of the importance of having fellowship and people around, is like, you know, another set of eyes to look and say, wait a minute. And so, okay, we got that. And then in Romans, it talks about how even God hardens whom he wills. And so I think that's kind of what we see here with Pharaoh, where he hardened himself to a certain point where even God continued the hardening. And so when I was kind of thinking about what's the way to avoid the hardening, right? To not let ourselves allow our hearts to be hardened. And so that's kind of what I wanted to bring up, even just to hear any thoughts that you guys have. Like, how do we be on guard? How do we avoid letting ourselves be hardened to little things? So if anyone had a thought, Mr. Lopez?
So I think the first step to the road to recovery is admitting you have a problem.
Yeah. Okay.
So identifying that, you know, that there is a hardening of hearts. So how do you identify that? I think it's the evidence of, or the fruit of the hardening. So and I think it's compromise. So if you're compromising, just like Pharaoh did, just like we do, like today, if we're compromising our lives, our walk with God, then it's a hardened heart. And so you can continue to compromise and make all these leeways, if you will, to continue to go the path that you want to go rather than the path that, you know, he calls us to go.
Good, Mr. Barnes.
I was still from Mr. Lepke at the men's meeting, and talked about being in the Word every day. I think that is one of the biggest ways, because what does it talk about? The Word is sharper than any two-edged sword, able to divide in the soul and the spirit. If you're really allowing that Word to work in your life, I don't think you're going to be hard. But when you push that aside and say, I don't need that, might just be the beginning of the hardness. Just saying.
Yeah, I mean, isn't that what Pharaoh did? Basically ignored the word of God. Said, who's the Lord that I should listen to him, right? So ignoring the word of God is a step, yeah. Mr. Q?
Yeah, as people have been sharing, I was thinking, we know several Christian couples who are like on the verge of divorce, and I was thinking about that passage where they said to Yeshua, can a man divorce his wife for any reason? And he said, Moshe gave you the certificate of divorce because of the hardness of your heart. And And when you see Christian couples who have been married for 30, 40 years, that over progression can go that route. It's tragic. And I think seeing the long-term result of not keeping your heart soft and pliable. And my wife said, daily examining your heart, which ties into being in the Word and Romans 12, 1 and 2, present your body as a living sacrifice. Don't be conformed to the world. And so seeing the pictures of the hardness of the heart, and even God giving the Northern Kingdom a certificate of divorce because they had hardened their heart to his ways. And so knowing we don't want to ultimately harden our heart to God to the point of no return, but to seek him with all our heart. And I'm thinking about, too, the outward and inward, expressions. The mezuzah on the doorpost or whatever it might be. It reminded me of the passage where Yeshua rebuked the Pharisees and said, basically on the inside, you're full of dead men's bones. So, whitewashed tombs. The outward expression of our faith, baptism or whatever it might be, is important. But God looks at the heart and searches the heart. And so having the physical reminders is a great thing. But then knowing that God judges the heart and he sees what everybody else doesn't. So.
I was, with a couple of your words, Joseph, I was going back to John chapter 1 where it says in verse 10, Yeshua was in the world and the world was made through him and the world did not know him. And then 11 it says, he came to his own and those who were his own did not receive him. And then in 12 it says, but as many as received him, to them he gave the right, the privilege, and the authority to become children of God. And it was like, to those who received him, I mean, it just seems to me that there's a place where Yahweh has given us this opportunity to choose him or not to. And it's like we can receive this huge gift or we can reject it. I mean, in a huge way it's up to us, but it's like we have to come to this place of acknowledging, no, he's greater. He has more stuff to offer us than we have to offer ourselves. And so a willingness to receive that and let that come into us. And I just feel like in some way that he's been talking to me about that personally this week. It's like, he's saying to me, John, if you simply receive all of who I am, then, if you receive all of who, okay. If you receive all of who I am, it's really going to fill you up. And I haven't realized that it's like there's part of it is what you were saying, Brian, about reading the Word every day. I mean, it's really intensely getting to know him and letting him in who he really is and his love, his deep love for us. And it's like really receiving that, letting it come and letting it happen. And I know for me, I've just had so many years of believing the enemy's lie. You'll never measure up. You'll never be good enough. And believing that, instead of receiving Yahweh's truth is, I've made you well. I love you. I care for you. You're mine. And letting that come in. And it's like there's for a lot of years, there's been this battle. What's God offering me versus what's the enemy? And not really realizing it was that different. It was the enemy versus God. It was like, oh, wow, that's the difference. And so really simply embracing what Yahweh has for us rather than what, we think, what the enemy is. To me, it was this lie, but I thought it was the truth for so many years, not knowing it was a lie. And then begin to really accept the whole truth of what Yahweh is. I mean, even going back to John 10:10, where Yeshua said, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. And then he said, but I've come that they might have life and have it abundantly. And it's like, really, are we going to believe that? If we believe that, we're going to wait for it, we're going to pursue it, we're going to say, okay, Yahweh or Yeshua, where is this? How do I receive it? How do I open myself up to it? And so to me, there's a huge softening of our own hearts.
Remind me your question. Like, how do you
Just how do we
recognize-
avoid letting our hearts be hardened? What are keys to avoiding that?
Okay. So for me, recently, I just recognized my lack of peace within, and I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. So getting time away and listening to the Lord, what's that coming from? And then He could identify it, and then He could walk me through it. But to me, it was just the lack of peace was like, Mayday, Mayday.
Anybody else, Bradley?
Not to make excuses, so this is not an excuse, but I think sometimes your early childhood experiences, or even as a young person growing up, can really leave you with a really hardened heart, and it's hard. I mean, it's really hard to get past it. I mean, in all honesty, because you end up really just not trusting anybody, even Father God, and I think it's where you just really have to cry out to the Father, circumcise my heart, give me a heart of flesh. I can't do it. I don't have it in me. I mean, I've tried and tried and tried, right? And it's just like, I'm kind of at, kind of get to that point where, Father, I can't do it. You're going to have to give me a new heart.
Yeah.
Doesn't the Bible say that somewhere? I give you a new heart. You lose your intimate connection with the Father when you don't obey Him. And I mean, even in the little things. When you're just, He's asking you to do something and you're not doing it. Yeah.
Right.
And so that's not good.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what we're talking about, right? Is even little physical things that help us. Obviously, yes, God is the only one who can soften our hearts. He's the only, He's the victory. It's through Yeshua that we're able to overcome and all that. But there are sometimes little things that we can pick up on. So I'll just share one of the things that the guy that I was talking to on Sunday, what he was talking about was how he was reading this book that's basically, I think, from a Jewish perspective, talking about how each person has this responsibility to basically kind of guard themselves, okay? And so we have a responsibility to keep ourselves from going certain areas. So it's kind of like all the fence law type of things, okay? So obviously the fence law is like, you're not supposed to, grab a head of wheat and rub it and eat the wheat on Shabbat or something like that, okay? Obviously Yeshua said, you don't need to be telling somebody else that they can't do that. But if you feel convicted about that, and that's going to help you not break the Shabbat, and you're going to take that upon yourself to be careful not to do that on Shabbat, that's great, right? That's a good way to protect yourself from breaking the Shabbat. But we can't put those things on somebody else. But basically saying that, each of us has a responsibility to guard the pure soul that God gives us, and to maintain that in the world that we live in with all of the temptations and things. And so part of what we're doing is each time that we fall, we should basically be looking at it and going, wait, how did that happen? Like if we sin, right? We should be looking at it and saying, what led up to that? Like where did I cross the line that I ended up here, right? And so we should always be, I guess, kind of aware of those types of things and starting to learn little things. Oh, this often will trigger me to go there, and then it leads here. And so recognizing those things way ahead of time and saying, if I just don't even go there, then this and this and this and this can't even happen, right? And so that was kind of one of the things that he brought up, which I thought was pretty good. But anybody else have another thought?
I have a small voice against it. I think that as a believers, our privilege is that this is the word peace. The peace in our heart, this is our sign that if we are in the will of God or not. In my experience of life, I know that when I was not in the will of God, I have no peace. And then I ask the Lord and I pray, I want to say to my sister, just it's between you and God, and to pray and to ask Him to show you what is prevent you to feel the peace, to have the peace. Because this is the sign, the privilege of us to have peace of God, which is when the veil went out, and we have access to God but the peace is our sign that we are in His will.
That's good. Yeah. That actually ties in with another thing I wanted to share. So this is Hebrews chapter 4, if you want to read along. I'm just going to read like the first 4 or 8 verses of Hebrews chapter 4. Okay, therefore, since a promise remains of entering his rest, let us fear lest any of you seem to have come short of it. For indeed the gospel was preached to us as well as to them, but the word which they heard did not profit them, not being mixed with faith in those who heard it. For we who have believed do enter that rest, as he has said, so I swore in my wrath, they shall not enter my rest. Although the works were finished from the foundation of the world, for he has spoken in a certain place of the seventh day in this way, and God rested on the seventh day from all his works, and again in this place, they shall not enter my rest. Since therefore it remains that some must enter it, and those to whom it was first preached did not enter because of disobedience, again he designates a certain day, saying in David, today, after such a long time as it has been said, today if you will hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. And then he says, for if Joshua had given them rest, then he would not afterward have spoken of another day. So he's basically just saying the rest that Joshua gave them entering into the promised land is not enough. It's Yeshua who provides that rest, which I think ties in with what you're talking about, the peace that we get through Yeshua and the rest. And also tying in with what Mr. Palm said about just being, right? Being who God says we are. And when we accept that, there is a certain amount of this peace, the rest, and the closeness when we're pursuing that with him that avoids the hardening of the heart, like he was talking about here, right? Today, if you'll hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. So this was kind of one of those little things that was just more solidly connected for me today, or this week when I was studying this, and just kind of seeing the two sides of what Messiah does. Messiah gives us the rest, so that we're not trying to work and do all these works to earn our salvation or do something of our own thing. But at the same time, he enables us to obey and to do all the things that are written in the commands, right? So it's like the two sides of it. It's by that peace and rest, knowing that it's not up to us. We don't have to earn it. But realizing that is our call and our mission that enables us to just walk it out and to do those things that God calls us to do. And, it's shown in the way that God rests on the seventh day, which the writer of Hebrews brings up here, is like, God, he creates the whole world, and then on the seventh day he rests, okay? So on the seventh day, when he rests, does the sun stop coming up? Did the birds stop, laying eggs and all those types of things? Right? His creation was already set in place. The laws, if you want to call it that, the laws of nature were already put in place where the things just go. So it doesn't change. When we enter into the rest of Messiah, the laws that God's already established should just continue flowing in us, right? So it's like the same exact picture we see with God and the rest of the seventh day, Yeshua and our rest. We're not trying to earn something. We're not trying to create something new or earn, now I'm saved by my works type of thing. We're already there. We've been created new and we're saved, but we keep doing those laws that he set in order for us. So I thought that was kind of a helpful connection just to understand how it all works together. The rest on one hand, but at the same time, a continual, working out our salvation with fear and trembling, like they talk about, right? The apostles and stuff. So, Mr. Paul, comment?
Brady, you brought up Jeremiah 31:31. Where he's writing, he says, behold, days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. And then in 33 it says, but this is the covenant which I will make with the house of Israel after these days, declares the Lord. I will put my law within them, and on their heart I will write it, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And then it says, there's verse 34, they shall not teach each other, teach again each man his neighbor, each man his brother, saying, know the Lord, for they shall all know me. It's like God's going to change his ways. He's going to imprint the knowledge of who he is on our hearts. And it's going to be, to me, a miraculous thing that comes from him. And to me, that goes back to that passage in John 1 where he says, for those who receive him, this is what will happen. And so it's opening our hearts to that and just letting it come in. And Jeremiah 31:31, he's saying he will put this stuff on our hearts.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, it's just real quick. What you're talking about, entering into the rest, so that we can walk in his ways, if you will. It's the difference between being a slave and a son. You know, a son has that upbringing from dad. You don't have to work to become his son. You're his son. So when we become a new creation in him, it's the transferring over from that slave to sonship.
Yeah, kind of like what Mr. Holmes talked about, right? Where Yeshua talked to his disciples, I don't call you slaves anymore. Good. Anybody else? Okay. So yeah, that pretty much sums it up. The main thing is just like the idea of we got to be careful not to let our hearts get hardened. There's a couple passages, obviously, that talk about how the contrite, soft heart is what God wants, right? That's what he's looking for. And so to maintain that and guard that, because we have received that. We have received a soft and contrite heart through Yeshua. That is the gift through Yeshua. And so we do have a responsibility, though, to maintain that purity and to guard it so that we're not led astray by all the things that are in the world. But yeah, one of the other things I was going to mention that I found helpful in my walk is fasting. Fasting is definitely helpful to reveal little things that are like hardening, things that have hardened somehow, like just to kind of step back. And I find that when I'm fasting, especially for multiple days, if it's more than just one day, I will find that my sensitivity, spiritual sensitivity, if you want to say, is just like way heightened to the point where even like simple acts of kindness that normally I don't think anything of will just make me cry. Like just seeing someone be kind to someone else will just make me start crying. And it's like the sensitivity to what is right and good versus what is not. And I don't know, like it's amazing to me that they can be that different. But even after just a couple days into a fast, I can see that happening. But so that would be another thing I would add to the list of things. But being in his word obviously is a very important one too, as far as not allowing ourselves to be hardened. And then, yeah, one other thing I just forgot to mention, but when Israel goes out, this is later on, I think, in the next portion, but it says that they go out armed, some say armed or by their armies. The word in Hebrew is chamushim, which the root of that word is chamesh. So there's been sages or whatever who've said that basically could be understood that it was only 1/5 of Israel that actually went out, because the root of the word is 5. So basically saying, when they went out, it was only 1/5 of Israel that actually left. A lot of them were so hardened and just basically seeing no hope outside of what they were provided in Egypt that they just didn't leave. And so I was kind of, likening that to the end times when, we're called to come out of Babylon and to come out of Egypt, the world, right? And how many people basically just become hardened to everything that the world offers and thinking that there's no hope outside of that. Like, why would I want to abandon when they're providing everything I need? And, the deception. And so whether or not it's true that it was only 1/5, I mean, it's a real thing to, consider and make sure that we're not allowing ourselves to be hardened in the sense that when the time comes and we're called out, that we're not ready to go. So that's what I had. Okay, let's get ready to eat. Okay. Father, thank you for this time to read your word and to discuss it. Father, thank you for teaching us. Thank you for speaking to us and speaking through us, Father. Help each one of us to take your word to heart, the thing that you're showing us today, and to apply it in our lives this week. Just thank you for choosing us and calling us and setting us apart. In Yeshua's name, amen.